any number of questions, but I felt that asking questions doesn't make sense because the panelists have already prepared the presentation, so they will not be bothered by any number of questions which have or haven't to do, so I won't do it. However, I will exercise my role as a moderator and say some unintelligent things because when I got the assignment, I was flattered and surprised at the same time, and I had to ask myself, what am I going to do? So, anyway, I then looked at the title, From Non-Proliferation to Counter-proliferation and Back Again, question mark. I'm sure that most of you cannot even begin to grapple with it, as I did. Because I feel free, Emily, as the organizer, and I'm only as the moderator, to start by posing a question as to the title. I'm sure that the panelists will also go into it, but my question is it really so that we moved from non-proliferation to counter-proliferation, and currently, in light of the development, are considering going back to non-proliferation? I am not sure about it. My understanding is that counter-proliferation has not succeeded non-proliferation, and to my understanding, never meant to, but to complement the non-proliferation efforts whenever that avenue can provide the necessary political answers to the challenge of arresting or combating non-proliferation. Those of you who were present at the previous session heard me only succinctly referring to the state of the non-proliferation regime with a major question at the end. Does the NPT live up to the challenge, and can the NPT currently regime really live up to the challenges which are major challenges currently at his hand? And that remains to be seen, whether we are going through a period where the questions as to the future of the NPT are more than the question, than more the assurance that that NPT will live out to do whatever originally it was meant. So that was my first observation as to the question. And are we back again to what exactly? So I'm sure that some of them are some of the panelists perhaps will address. But since, as I confessed ignorance, something which I don't do lightly, since all of us are familiar with non-proliferation regime, which at the center of which is the NPT regime, let me, by way of background, define what counter-proliferation is all about. From what I read, one of the definitions is that counter-proliferation may be considered as the military component of the non-proliferation, in the same way as military strategy could be seen as a component of foreign policy. And to be a bit more specific, let me cite from a document that I read, I'm quoting, counter-proliferation is not about building new consensus that non-proliferation is important. Rather, having accepted its importance, we might decide to prevent proliferation where possible, to assist countries in a rapid and flexible way when opportunities arise to dismantle weapons, and to defend against proliferants when our diplomatic efforts fail. End of quotation. And finally, another observation, simply to fill you in, because every arms control counter-proliferation has to be has to be seen in the context in which it was conceived of. And as to the origin of counter-proliferation, it all started under the Clinton administration back in 1993, and more precisely under the sponsorship of Secretary of Defense, the late Les Aspin, though the rationale for the U.S. Counter-proliferation policy was a result of lessons learned from the Gulf War. Deficiencies in the U.S. capabilities to deal with NBC threat were noted in the after-action report on the war made to Congress. The initiative was adopted by the Bush administration, who turned to the Pentagon to to develop new capabilities which will help to defend against potential proliferators, including capabilities to allow the U.S. Army to preempt militarily. Those who support counter-proliferation believe that the military option will enhance the traditional non-proliferation option, namely the political, diplomatic, and economic one. So to sum it up, counter-proliferation is not a substitute for non-proliferation. It is meant to provide an additional instrument if non-proliferation fails. I don't have to argue to tell you that the issue of counter-proliferation against the backdrop of the Iranian efforts to acquire capabilities is very also a propitious time to deal with that and to pose some question, as I said, against as to the title. Now, who will be discussing those issues? First and foremost, Emily Landau, a senior research associate at INSS, where she directs the Arms Control and Regional Security Program. She has published and lectured extensively on nuclear proliferation, arms control, and regional security in the Middle East, proliferation challenges in the post-Cold War era, and Israel's nuclear image and policy. And currently, Emily is completing a comparative study of 10 years of diplomatic efforts to confront the nuclear ambitions of Iran and North Korea. Second, after Emily, will be Giora Island. Giora is also a senior research associate at the INSS. Major General retired, was head of Israel's National Security Council, and previous to that, during his long career in the IDF, Major General Island served as head of the planning directorate of the, as I said, IDF. And last but not least, he's not present here, but he's permanently on his way. He's permanently on his way. And he will arrive at one point, and that is the distinguished Jeremy Issacharoff, Ambassador for Strategic Affairs, Deputy Director General of Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has been an advisor to the Foreign Minister and Director General of the Foreign Ministry, directed and coordinated the ministry diplomatic efforts regarding Iraq, Iran nuclear threat, served on the UN board, advisory board on disarmament, and happens to be a good friend of mine.
As opposed to the other two?
Ephraim Kam, when I spoke, wrote me, Shimon, 21 minutes are over, please. There is no time limit. Go ahead.